Hi potential viewers, welcome to my channel. The topic of this video is the Great War, not the actual war, but the 2017 movie, co-produced by big Chinese and US movie companies and starring Matt Damon, Andy Lau, and other young and famous actors and actresses from Chinese cinema, and directed by world-renowned Chinese director Zhang Yimou. And somewhat to my surprise at the time, after it was announced, the bland and kind of generic-looking trailer got some really trigger responses from different people. If you paid attention at the time, one of the most vocal was the Fresh Off the Boat star Constance Wu, who later starred as the lead actress in Crazy Rich Asians, accusing the movie of perpetuating the white savior trope. If you did not get a chance to watch the movie and is not planning to, here is the plot breakdown and, of course, spoiler alert. Basically, Matt Damon is this bounty hunter / mercenary type of character, tasked with finding the secrets of gunpowder from China. During his travel, he and his companion was attacked by some mysterious monster, and they were able to fight it off. Later, they found a part of the Great Wall, got locked up in it, and was able to warn a way out by helping to defend the wall's defenses by killing an intruding green lizard-like monster that breached the wall. After that, Matt Damon learned about the monsters attacking the wall, Taotie, a kind of legendary monster, from greed and possessing insatiable appetite, considered as an embodiment of the deadly sin, gluttony, and greed. He also learned about the ways of the Chinese army, a way of honor, loyalty, and trust, which is also the almost exact opposite of his character, where he sells his loyalty to the highest bidder and goes where the coins point to. Matt Damon's character now inspired and was temporarily included in the ranks because his cool bow skills, fighting alongside the Chinese army guarding the Great Wall against a new wave of Taotie invasion, and that started launching attacks and were trying to break down these defenses to spread horror to the land. Due to many circumstances and some smart plotting on Monster's part, the Great Wall's defenses were completely breached, and Matt Damon's character, with the main female character, who is the general of the defense army, teamed up in a desperate attempt trying to save China by going after the queen of the Taotie horde, with the help and sacrifices of various characters portrayed by famous Chinese actors and actresses, especially the wise strategist played by Andy Lau, and was eventually able to kill it, thus eliminating the whole threat to the land of China from the whole terror of Taotie. Okay, spoiler over. And if you found the plot somewhat generic and bland and not really much of a white savior type of movie, unless you really have to find it, then you will be correct. It is, I believe, the first attempt of direction by Zhang Yimou of a big-budget internationally co-produced action/fantasy movie aimed not only at the Chinese market but also at international, especially North American audiences. Matt Damon's character, if you actually watch the movie and has some experience with the Chinese cinema tropes, is actually quite different from what the Western world would say the white savior character. If you did not mistake Matt Damon's bland performance as some sort of a stoic heroism, you could tell that this character is actually quite a scoundrel by his background. He has no loyalty to anyone, no interest in anyone else's well-being but his own, and perhaps maybe a little bit of his companions, and no sense of belonging. And through fighting alongside the army that defends the Great Wall with their lives and leaving everything behind, he learned the values and virtues and started adhering to them, and later basically prepared to risk his life to save China. So between a diversity hire and white savior, he was somewhat in between. And this was probably the best place to put him for the director of this movie. Matt Damon's character needs to have enough screen time to justify his appearance and has enough appeal to the international audiences. Since the cast consists of mainly Chinese, he also needs to play a relatively central role in the movies to justify his addition and not be seen as a bait and switch, but also he cannot be anywhere near the savior role because obvious reason, and that the movie still needs to make past the Chinese censors, and probably more importantly, serve its propagandistic purpose. Yes, the Great Wall movie was a propagandistic movie, not for propaganda, I might say, but it seems to be tasked with certain propagandistic messages, a soft one at that, but it's still a propagandistic one. Now, like some other things I said earlier, if you are familiar with the Chinese cinema tropes, that is an important condition of you understanding what this movie actually means. In this case, the propaganda tropes are not that subtle and at times can be somewhere on the nose, if you're familiar with it. That unlike typical American propagandistic movies, think of, say, Michael Bay's trope of every US flag per a couple of minutes. The Chinese propagandistic movies did not really use China's military power or its superior political ideologies and systems as the base material, mostly because of the recent history of being defeated by the West through numerous wars and thus causing a culture of shame in the recent history. But the Chinese propagandistic movies often show the strength of culture, traditional wisdom from its long, claimed to be unbroken inheritance of the civilization from up to 5,000 years. And sometimes in more modern settings, the devotion to the people and their patriotic passion. A lot of movies and TV series and novels with an outsider being wowed and educated by the wonderful Chinese traditional wisdom trope have been born out of this kind of propaganda strategy. Some of the widely beloved movies about the anti-Japanese war or the Second Sino-Japanese War, the Korean War, especially have featured such kind of foreign characters, sometimes Japanese, sometimes Western, typically white males. These characters who typically fought against the Chinese people or sometimes alongside them, and due to various circumstances, they tend to become amazed, enchanted, inspired by the Chinese wisdom and virtue, and become sort of better people. And they ended up siding with the Chinese or abandoning their animosity towards them. Or when they are fighting alongside the Chinese people, become more devoted to the cause. Several as an example is the white and buff brawler who challenged all martial artists in China for a fight from the movie Fearless, whose Chinese name is 霍元甲, starring Jet Li. And the latter, besides Matt Damon's character, the American pilot from the Second World War period movie Lover's Grief Over the Yellow River, in Chinese name is 黄河决恋, who fell in love with a Chinese female warrior and fought alongside her guild against the Japanese invaders. Such a trope was very much embedded in the backbone of the Great Wall movie, So as you can tell, the gift of knowledge and wisdom and loyalty to the outsider and the taming of the wild beast and the enlightenment of the savage per se, whatever you call it. Matt Damon's character being the white male archetype, and there's the symbol of the Western world, uneducated and a world without wisdom, was going through the repeated and common path of scoundrel to enlightened ally. And paired up with the Chinese traditional mythical lores happening in ancient times, rendered by CGI and commercialized Chinese people's own mythical epic movie was its value prop to the Chinese audience. And this is why it is a bit amazing and very funny to me about the whole white savior / whitewashing accusations that are made against this movie. It was very much not intended that way. The director very clearly and arguably quite carefully crafted Matt Damon's character in order to fit into the role. And to me, it was not a failure. The director also mentioned in an interview that he personally picked Matt Damon because of the fact that he was a fan of Matt Damon's style and persona, and also chose him for his star power to draw in Western audiences and to serve as half of the figurative bridge between the cultures and audiences. The performance of Matt Damon was lackluster at best, but it was mostly due to the movie's script lacking any substance, you might call. The movie did at one point have a love scene between Matt Damon's character and the main heroine, who was later, but it was later removed. I mean, a white guy and an Asian girl. It's sensitive here and sensitive there. But from the final outcome, it probably was an attempt at deepening the story, since it did not have any character depth. It also has a Mary Sue kind of main heroine, who's a strong woman role, typical Hollywood style, whose makeup never got even ruined a little bit, even going through the most intensive of battles. Also, if you know about the Chinese cinema history, the main actress is kind of an enigma herself. She is kind of known for getting the big star roles in big budget movies, even though she was at most a mediocre actress. But back to my point. The trigger crowd's outrage did not have much, if any, ground to stand on. It was clearly based on the more shredded resemblance to that so-called White Savior movie, and not on any knowledge of the director's intentions or the style of Chinese cinema history and its tropes. And it is also kind of symbolic of the current political atmosphere, where the perception of the offended outvolumes and outreaches the original author's intent, at least to the Western crowd. It is also quite ironic that the likes of Constance Wu and the people offended by this movie, through their jumping to the conclusions without understanding underlying nuances of the situation and cultural background of a piece of artwork, are displaying a very, very iconic sign of Western centralism, that your non-Chinese speaking, kind of whitewashed upbringing, a virtue signaling, liberal ultra-progressive mindset has more perception into the meaning of something than the author of the art himself. But in the end, everything probably worked out for the best. Matt Damon got paid, Zhang Yimou got brownie points from the Chinese censors, who probably later gave him more creative freedom than his other fellow Chinese art creators. Constance Wu and the offended crowd felt good about themselves, and I got to make a super late debut commentary video about how funny and frustrating the situation was. Thank you for watching my video. I hope to see you next time.